Hi, I'm Brent Barry. I head up Pro Series at Logitech G. Really excited to be here today to talk about esports and about designing for athletes. So I have some great panelists here. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Regis Croisonnier. I'm the head of gaming engineering in Logitech G.
Hi, I'm Andy Dinh, and I'm the CEO of TSM.
My name is Martin. I am 26 years old, out of Sweden. Most people know me as Rekkles, and I am a professional esports athlete in League of Legends.
My name is Jon Campbell, and I had the pleasure of leading our gaming business at Herman Miller.
Awesome. You know, this whole world of esports has been really crazy, how much it's changed, becoming a real cultural phenomenon. And part of that has led to all of us really having to question fundamental things like what is an athlete? You know, how do we design and build the best gear possible for competitive performance? So many things have changed. For us and for our partners at Herman Miller, taking a real collaborative approach has been the solution. Working directly with the players and experts in this field. So I mean, just to, I guess, starting with you, Andy, really trying to understand the world of esports. You've been in this game for the past decade at least. I mean, can you help us understand like the changes as this has made been such a cultural force? Like, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, so I got into esports probably since 2008. So it's been quite some time, and it's evolved so fast, right? I'm sure Rekkles can tell you too. But when I started as a pro player, right, live streaming really just started, and like viewers for tournaments were in like the single digits, maybe like 20, 30, and like a good matches would have a few hundred, right? And like fast forward over like a span of like just a few years, we went from playing in like small theaters where 50 people would show up to, on a good day, 100, to in like a couple months seeing full theaters filled out, and then small arenas, and then small stadiums, and then within maybe like 5-6 years since 2008, I think the Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, and like all the arenas around the world were sold out in within 5 minutes. So massive change in culture and gaming as a whole.
Right. Rekkles, one of the things that I think is always interesting is, some people don't, I guess, really understand what goes into being an esports athlete. Can you help us understand, like, what is the life of an esports athlete? How do you train?
I think that life is way more than you expect it to be. Because in the beginning, even for myself, I thought I would maybe play a little bit of games here and there, and it would be fun and all happy times. But I think now with the years behind me, I realized that it's a 365 days a year job. Everything you do matters, every single detail you do matters, and a usual week would be 6 days of work and a 7th day off, but on that 7th day, most teams and most players end up gathering anyway to watch the game and to improve together and to get better together. So I think nowadays, I just see it as my life completely. I don't really have anything else outside of gaming and everything that is related to gaming going on. And I think that is how most pro players do it. And that's the only way really how you can make the whole thing work, because there are people out there that try their absolute best. So if you don't do the same, then you're not going to be able to beat them.
It's amazing. Like just the competitive spirit of all of this is crazy. I know at Logitech, we've been a part of esports for a long time, and the establishment of Logitech G meant a lot more effort going into the world of esports. And we were sponsors with TSM for several years. And I know, Andy, we had a conversation. I remember it was like back in 2015, and I was asking you, like, how can we improve? And you started talking to us about needing to make gear for pro players.
Yeah, so for context, right? What I really love about Logitech is that you guys truly care, and that it was more than just like a sponsorship, right? But what I really meant about that was that at that time, right, gaming peripherals had just way too many things, right? Numpads or extra keys on the side, And what pro players really need is something that's consistent, something that's reliable, and that it works really well every single time. And not only did gamers need something extremely reliable, but they also have different preferences, right? And at that time in 2015, we started to scale and have more teams. So originally we started off with League of Legends and eventually expanded to CSGO and various other games. And what we noticed was that different gamers that played different genres needed different equipment. So that was kind of the feedback that I gave to Logitech, and surprisingly enough, within just a few years, there was a robust product line that really catered to each and every pro, where CSGO players would use a specific mice and mobile players would use a different mice. And we thought that Logitech did a phenomenal job, servicing that market and really creating amazing products for pros.
Right. Do you remember the G keys that were on the keyboards?
Yes, I do.
We still have those, but for the pro players, obviously, they didn't want them. That was to me, that was always a funny piece of you guys looking for a solution, and our engineers like Regis taking the opportunity to solve it.
What I meant was I thought Logitech really cared, because when you guys sent us the G10 Plus, we actually took off the G keys, and we were competing with these keyboards where it would show that there's missing buttons, right? And even when our players moved their fingers over towards the G keys, what happened was they would touch the tip of the I don't know what you would call it, but the mouse buttons, and
right.
Very quickly within weeks, Logitech came up with a fix for us while you guys were working on the next keyboard. And you guys created this special cover just for the teams with our logos on it, and it would cover all the G keys, right? And we thought that was something really amazing that a partner would do for us, is to just create product and make changes on the fly to really make it work for us.
And Jon, you guys at Herman Miller also had kind of the same thing when it came to looking at pro players. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys got into identifying and addressing the needs you saw in esports?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually started hand in hand with Logitech G in the beginning, and actually Andy and TSM invited us over with a handful of visits. And really where we started, which is where you guys were at the time, is bringing our engineering and design teams to the pro players. And the way that Herman Miller works as a design-led company is we're there to solve a human problem, and that's it, and nothing else. And the way that we would approach that typically is we do it from observational research. So we just sit and watch you for as long as you will let us do it. And what we're doing is we're watching for every single body movement that the player is making. So where are they placing their feet? Where are they placing their hands? Where is their head located? How is their chair situated? Every part of their setup was a point of data for us as we were observing the athlete. And then from there, we take that and we move into more qualitative data where we're trying to figure out needs of why are you doing that? What would you need? Is this working? Is it not working? And that really just takes a good amount of time with sitting with the people who we're designing for, the athletes, and really getting to understand who they are, what they absolutely need at the end of the day. And we realized very quickly that they hadn't actually taken a whole lot of time to think about their chair. In most of the situations that we walked into, the chair was never actually thought about. It was rolled in, and the player was expected to sit in it, and that was it. And when you think about that, and you think actually over into traditional sports, you would never show up to a track and field event and have every runner, you hand them a size 8 pair of sneakers, and you say, these are your shoes today. They'd be like, no, I'm wearing my shoes that fit my foot, that help my overpronating and X, Y, right? That shoe is customized to their very foot. And for some reason, what we realized is that for esports athletes, that just wasn't the case. Probably the one product, and a biased opinion as a furniture company, but the one product that was so intimately connected with the player itself and had the most ability to fully be customized and optimized to the player's anthropometrics, which is just their size, shape, and all of that. We found a really exciting opportunity to bring highly customized products that are specifically designed to really get the player in a unique posture, which was the other big learning that we had, is most players were sitting more upright and they were leaning in. Very few players that we were watching did a lot of reclining and sitting back. So we actually worked together with the Logitech G design team and found a way to actually take the embodied chair, which was an existing platform at the time, and modify it in a way to support that upright posture and bring other elements like cooling foam. I'm sure both of you guys can attest to the fact of like getting really hot, right? Like when you sit for that amount of time. So how can we bring elements into the chair that can actually grab that heat and pull it away from your body to keep you comfortable for a long time? And now what we're really focused on is trying to identify the benefits that a player is not able to even articulate today. So a traditional athlete, like a footballer on the pitch, is going to tell you, I need to run faster. What we're actually hearing from gamers is around decision making and reaction time. That's not something you can super easily solve for with a product right away. So now what we're doing is we're building a performance model that can actually help us identify the limiting factors to performance for esports athletes, and then be able to manipulate those limiting factors in a way that can actually improve performance overall for players. And we believe that this will be our next way of designing for athletes in the future.
That's awesome. That kind of an approach, I think, is really important, really getting in and understanding the needs of the athlete. But I mean, I guess, Rekkles, tell us, what are the needs? Like when you're looking at whether it's a chair or your mouse, what does that mean? What do you actually need?
I think as a pro player, and I probably speak for most of us, the simpler the better almost, in most cases. I think it still needs to look cool, so I guess that's the hard part for a company like Logitech to make something that looks really cool, but it's still really simple and easy to use for us pro players. But I think they've done a pretty good job with the Pro Series. I use personally the Pro Series myself, and I love the Super Light, for example. It's just nice and easy to use, but doesn't have too much stuff going on. It has 2 buttons on the left side, which is more than enough for a game like League of Legends, and then just so that you don't have too much distractions in the way or anything that could take your focus off the game, so that you can just perform at your best.
Was changing from wired mice to wireless mice difficult for you?
It wasn't actually so difficult, but it was probably a very helpful change, because I always struggled with the cord to the mice, and I would even, back in the day, bring a roll of tape to every event I would go to so that I could keep it under control when I was playing. And the same thing could be said for the headset. I didn't really enjoy the fact that I was always stuck to my PC and I couldn't walk around while still communicating to my team. So coming over to Logitech, I got the opportunity to have a wireless headset instead, and that has been a really big help for me as someone who stands up a lot in between games to try to relieve some pressure from sitting down so much.
I guess, Regis, can you help us understand more of for Logitech, how do we do this? How do we understand the needs and design?
I think it's pretty similar to what Jon explained. We are really using the design thinking methodologies. So in a sense, we are building a cross-functional team. So we are made of engineers, designers, and product managers. And they are really user-focused. So they are really focusing on their user emotion and needs. And definitively, the only way to understand those people is to talk with them, to observe, as Jon said, them, and to try to extract the insight from it, because usually they are not expressly telling their needs. Oh, I want this, or I want this. You need to ask questions. You need to read into the line. And I think I have 2 examples in my mind. The first one is the weight. I think we talked about having a light mouse is helpful. Nobody was asking for a lighter mouse. But by talking and asking questions, we realized that, maybe it's interesting. So this is where we started to build prototypes, because what is key as well is to understand the needs, to come with a solution, and then build some prototypes, validate with the right audience, with the pro in this case, and get their feedback. And we have a different round of iteration. It's not one time, it's not done in one shot. It means sometimes we are building 10, 15, 20 prototypes before finding the right experience. So the weight was a cool example where now we are launching the Pro X that is in the range of 60 grams. Another older example, I think we talked as well about corded versus cordless. 5-6 years ago, everybody was using a corded mouse in the Pro segment. And we realized that finally, in terms of experience, they don't have the full freedom of action, right, because of the cable. And when we said, what if we're removing the cable? the first response was, no way, wireless will not work. We want to have something, a mouse that is reliable. And this is where we spent some time in the engineering to develop Lightspeed, that everybody knows as our wireless protocol, that is as robust and reliable than a corded mouse. And in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, we had a team who won some championships with our first wireless mouse. And since this time, everybody has been adopting the wireless mouse. Nobody was claiming, oh, wireless mice are not as good as corded. So definitively, for me, really talking with our users, identifying their needs, because as I said, they're not really talking about it. Coming with prototypes, validating, iterating is really the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think being a part of some of the process that I think is really interesting is that, like, we'll sometimes prototype with hundreds of players.
Yeah.
And like the success of like the Superlight that you were talking to Rekkles about loving, I mean, we talked with so many people, and like you start seeing the differences, but the similarities of what people need and how it can help. The payoff of really of that, like, teams winning with it was huge.
And one thing I think like we have in common with Herman Miller is the comfort. On a mouse, if I take a mouse, the comfort is key. So finding the right shape that can somehow be comfortable for a big bunch of people is really a nice challenge we have each time we are building a new mouse.
Yeah. This is why we work so well together, is because we had a very similar language when it came to designing and solving problems. Just hearing you talk about like the way that you observed and built and solved these problems for players. When we put our teams together, it's like they were almost like they seemed like they worked for the same company, which made our partnership really, really great.
What are the best pieces on innovation we have with talking to players? Like, wireless was a huge one for us.
I think what is this really for the pro? I would say wireless, definitively. The weight, I think reducing the weight of the mouse is key, and the comfort of our headset as well is really key for people who are playing hours and hours with our pro headset.
Cool. And Andy, for you, like, when you talked to us, you know, back then and kind of pushed us to try to innovate, it really did change how we did things, moving us from designing, you know, with great features and great products, but without specifically looking at the pro player in mind. I mean, how do your players react today to, you know, the gear they use?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll speak about my experiences first, and then obviously theirs. But I think that not only did Logitech solve a lot of the problems at the competition day level, right, but also the day-to-day gaming level, because you have to keep in mind that these pros are playing also 8 hours a day on their own free time, right? And so much of it is that, like, not only did you solve wireless for headsets, but also mice, right? And so, like, just standing up, walking to the kitchen with your headset on, still talking, being able to talk to your teammates or your friends. That alone is a massive quality of life change. And then I guess wireless on the mice, if you are using a wired mice and you don't have the tape that Rekkles had, or you weren't diligent enough to bring tape to events, right? What you kind of had to experience was every single table was different. And so almost always your tracing would be always off because you would pull against the wired mice against the table, and through time there would be enough wear and tear on your wire where the tug is different every single time, right? And I thought that was probably one of the largest innovations and one of the really biggest steps for gamers is that at least as a person that had to travel a lot to compete, you didn't have to go through that anymore, right? And so I thought that was massively helpful for all of our gamers. But I would say, like, each of our pros, they have their own preferences, but I think that from pure, like, what really created, like, the largest delta that people were really happy with, I think that had to be wireless for at least me.
And at Rekkles, I remember back, you were in Alliance. You guys spent several weeks in our office in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco area. I mean, what was that experience like?
It was an interesting experience. It was my first experience actually working together with Logitech and working together with any gear company, because before then it was kind of so early still in the professional scene that everyone just used whatever they wanted. There was no structure in place or anything like that. So that experience together with Logitech was my first one, seeing someone actually care and want to do something for the pros instead of just the pros doing whatever they wanted.
Cool. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you guys in the office.
It was a pleasure being here.
Designing for the athlete, I think, is really important, because we do identify like new innovations and chances to change technology and all of that. And Jon, for you, like, designing for the athlete is one piece, but you guys have a whole world of people and gamers. And how has this like idea of designing for an athlete impacted Herman Miller as a whole?
Yeah, it's given us another thing to obsess over, which is actually really fun and exciting. But what we think about for the athletes and esports athletes is that they are the tip of the spear for us when we think about solving a human problem for a person who sits at a desk and uses a mouse and a keyboard and uses a screen. What we actually saw in Herman Miller has been around for over 100 years, or actually 100 years this year. And what we have seen in our 70 years of research is we see actual injuries for people in the office that typically happen around probably their 50s or 60s of an entire life of working in the office. And then when we first started engaging with players, we were actually seeing the exact same injury we would find in 50 and 60-year-olds office workers in 21-year-olds, 22-year-old esports athletes. And for us, that was just mind-boggling for us because of the acceleration and exacerbation of musculoskeletal injuries and repetitive motion injuries, which come from sitting and then making the same motion over and over and over again, was unbelievable for us to say, like, wow, these are young people dealing with real problems that can drastically impact the rest of their life. And that was one thing that really pulled us into it to say, hey, if we can solve this problem for the esport athlete, we can solve this problem for anyone out there in the world who sits in is trying to increase their productivity and improve themselves over time, which really for us draws us back to this idea and this notion of who is an athlete. We stress that word over and over and over again, and I know I talked to some players who would probably tell me that, oh, I'm not an athlete. But for us, what we believe is that high performance is performance under stress. And we all actually experience those types of stressful moments when we're trying to perform. And what you typically find in a traditional athlete is a very clear performance metric for them to have. And that performance metric is really important because they can monitor it, they can build a training program around it, and they can build product that will support them. And what the result is typically is much less burnout over time. You can prevent injury and you can improve performance. So the idea that we have is that because there's a lacking performance metric in gaming today and for esports athletes, that's probably actually the leading indicator for why we're seeing such high levels of burnout, is because we don't actually have the right metric to look at to be able to build a training protocol around and really focus in on helping keeping players healthier for the long term. We were talking earlier, like what I would love to see the future of esports is actually seeing players late 30s still competing at the highest level possible and pushing really, like when we think about legacy and experience, that's usually not talked about within the world of esports. It's kind of next person up, right? Who's the next youngest? Who's the next fastest person? But what we can actually do is we can keep players healthier longer. We can really invest in legacy and experience, and then be able to translate that through the office, through anyone who sits and sees themselves as an athlete.
Rekkles, do you see yourself as an athlete?
I do, yeah. I think in the beginning I didn't. In the beginning, as I said earlier, I saw it more as like a fun thing to do for a couple of years maybe, but now I am on year 11, so by this time I definitely consider myself an athlete.
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear you as well mention how 21, 22-year-olds run into issues, and I myself ran into my issues at 20. Back in 2017 when I was just turning 20, I started having issues with my right wrist and my right elbow, and that's when I first got into researching about ergonomics and how to sit properly and how to work out and keep myself in good shape so that I can actually do this for a longer time. And now I am 26 today, and I still feel more than capable enough to do this. So I think I would also very much advocate for that kind of becoming a structure in place for players so that they don't have to run into the same issues as I did.
Like following the health piece, I know, Andy, for you have a lot of players to take care of. What are the key things you guys do for player health? I mean, Logitech gear always helps, but what else is important for you in treating your athletes right?
Yeah, so I think there's really like there's a few pieces, right, that I think I personally think truly affect a player's performance outside of like playing the game, right? And I think sleep is probably like one of the biggest components, probably with performing anything well, right? And so we do track that. And then I think the second thing that we could probably do that's outside the game would be nutrition. And so our chefs do cook for the players every single day for all their meals. And it's really important that they eat healthy and they're eating the right types of food before they play and after they play. I can't really explain the science behind it, right? But like the way our nutritionist would actually explain it is that like you don't want to eat types of food that where blood will rush your stomach versus blood rushing to your brain. So typically eating lighter for lunch right before practice time is super important.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. There's so many things like looking at. I guess overall, Regis, for Logitech, all of this innovation that we're working on and trying to do with pro gamers. I mean, sometimes the features for a pro gamer are different than what we maybe want for your average gamer. But how does this impact when we design for athletes? How does that impact what we do for non-athletic gamers like me?
So, first of all, I would like to mention engineers or designers love to work for find solutions for athletes, for pro, because this is really, they have a key objective, right? And I think I could give one example where we could leverage somehow for what we're doing for the pro line, and that benefit to the rest of all our portfolio or product line. We talk about wireless. If you take pro, they're playing, in a stage in LAN parties where you have tons of people using wireless products, smartphone, Wi-Fi, and it means that our wireless protocol has to be ultra robust. So we have been designing light speed, and we are also simulating light speed in an ultra noisy environment, and we want to ensure that they won't have any concern about, the lag or issues with the protocol.
I remember.
So it means,
I remember. Sorry, I remember you guys taking a system to DreamHack, where there were thousands of people at this place, probably 10,000 computers plus everything else, just specifically to test the protocol.
So we were measuring the noise in the LAN party to be able to replay this in our labs to validate the fact that our protocol is robust. So it benefits to the rest of our users because at the end, light speed is the same. And even if they are in a home or in a building where you have ton of neighbors, still it work pretty well. So I would say definitely what we do for the pro will benefit to the rest of our portfolio. For sure, we may have specific features that we are designing for the rest of our portfolio, but no doubt, it is really helpful. And this is helping us to push the limit, to push the barriers of the technology as well. This is what is really interesting.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for being a part of this. It's been fun. I hope we can keep doing more to design for athletes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.